to the cloud. Here we go. So good afternoon, everyone. It's Yvonne Silver recording live as we're heading into the holiday season, and I'm excited that I have Melinda Wittstock joining me today. As you know, I'm doing a series of interviews with influential and powerful women that I've met in a variety of circumstances who have an important message to share, all connected with the topic of confidence, which, as many of you know, is the topic of my upcoming book. So this is a pre-launch series of interviews. Thank you for joining me today, Melinda. I know that where are you anyway? Somewhere in the country, but...
I'm traveling, so I'm actually in a hotel lobby. And so keep your fingers crossed that it won't get too loud. I was sitting here before we started, dead silent. And then the minute we came on, suddenly like lots of people came through the hotel lobby. So hopefully you can hear me okay. It is what it is. It's Christmas time. Got to be lots of places all at the same time, apparently. So
yes, it's almost like doing a Facebook Live.
Oh, I know, right? You never know what's going to happen on those.
Exactly. So for those who haven't had a chance yet to connect with Melinda, Melinda is the founder for the Wings Inspired Business Wings. Oh, I'm going to probably get the name wrong now.
It's called Wings of Inspired Business. It's a podcast for female entrepreneurs.
There we go. Thank you. And also the founder for Verifeed. And Verifeed is an interesting high-tech company. I'm actually going to let you explain what it's about. Clearly, I'm having challenges today.
Not to worry. So we call it a social intelligence platform. And what we mean by that is really a mix of business intelligence, market intelligence, consumer intelligence that just happens to be gathered from a really dynamic canvas, which is social media conversations. So every day people share a lot about themselves, their hobbies and their interests and what they care about, their tastes. And our algorithms and machine learning and increasingly artificial intelligence parses through all those conversations so we can help other companies find their customers, find the customers that are the most influential, really understand them, and so that messages and content can be aimed at those people that is actually interesting to them. So you can have conversations that are personalized, that actually resonate and drive word of mouth at scale. So that's what I do with Verifeed.
Lovely. And you and I first met in the summer when we were both at a high potential entrepreneur camp, and it was lovely to have a chance to connect briefly there. And since then, you've launched the podcast. Mm-hmm. So how did the podcast idea get started? I am curious about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, a long time ago, I was a TV and radio host, and I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I've run a lot of content businesses over the time. So back in about 2013, I decided I wanted to write a book on female entrepreneurship, really about my own experience. I was very interested in that intersection between personal growth and business growth. Mm-hmm. So I set out about planning the book, but I had this idea in my head that I had to grow and scale and sell Verifeed before I could do the book. And it was this false assumption. And I just finally got around to starting the book this year. And it progressed really quickly. I interviewed a lot of amazing women, including you. And when it came time to think about, well, how is this book going to be promoted? Then everyone said to me, oh, well, you need a community, so you should do a podcast. And then they said, why aren't you doing a podcast already? You're an award-winning interviewer. Like, are you kidding me? You were like a BBC News anchor. You were with Anderson Cooper on ABC News. You've created a whole radio business that grew to 300 radio stations. Why are you not doing a podcast? And it was the funniest thing. So I just decided to start, and I made the decision I was going to launch it in September, and we were live on November 8th. With 20 episodes, and it's a daily podcast. And every day I interview an amazing woman who's an entrepreneur. And Yvonne, you were on, and it was an amazing interview. And we talk about all sorts of things. I mean, it's really about the same thing as the theme of the book. Like, what is the inner right stuff you need to manifest success outwardly? We talk about how to manifest confidence, connections, and capital.
Yeah. And what I love about what you're doing, which I see such a close correlation with a lot of my clients and my business too, is focusing not just on pure profit, but how can you bring a social enterprise element into the business model? And that's, where we met. Yannick Silva's business camp, Evolved Enterprise, is a key model. And I love that model of, win-win for everybody. So I'm excited that maybe we'll have some further conversations on that topic.
It's really true, because the evolved enterprise is such an interesting idea. I mean, some people call it conscious capitalism. There are a number of different things, but really you can do extremely well by doing good. And women are particularly suited for this, because for many years, women would launch nonprofits. Right. Or these cause, or just be philanthropists, rather than applying that to entrepreneurship. And my belief is that entrepreneurs are really going to solve all the big challenges. We can't really rely on governments, but entrepreneurs can move faster with more innovation, can get things done, can really think outside the box and innovate. So when you apply that to solving issues like climate change, or how our health system or our education system is broken, it's amazing. And then the other big trend driving this, of course, are millennials and the Gen Zers coming behind them, because they literally won't purchase anything unless the company has diversity on its board, and a similar hiring policy, a clean supply chain, and increasingly a model that's evolved enterprise, whether it's like a buy one, give one, or it's giving a portion of top line revenue to charity. I mean, however that manifests, the more creative, the better.
Yeah, and certainly what I've noticed in how this connects to the topic of confidence, and this is one of the reasons I started writing the book, is with my female coaching clients, who are mostly founders, women entrepreneurs with big visions, that I was sharing the same information over and over and over about how to have more powerful, confident conversations, how to increase their sales, how to manage their staff more effectively, and that intersection between where language, psychology, and behavior all knits together was a key piece. And what I noticed in the founders is those that were getting stressed out and having a chance, well, really heading into burnout, once they realized that if they incorporated a social element into their business, that it actually felt different. They had less marketing to do, because everybody who was a client was bragging them up and talking confidently about their business, just because they had structured it with a different way. So my son actually taught me this piece too, about having the heart centered as an integral part of the business, not an add-on later to give 10% of profits, but integral to the business. So let's dive into this topic of confidence, because that's what this series is about. So I'm really intrigued to hear your insights, either personal insights from the podcast, if there's some shares that came through that. I'm particularly interested in words. So what are some of the words that you've observed, felt, experienced that have had an impact on raising women's confidence or deflating it?
Well, I can think of ways in which women sometimes let themselves down in conversations or minimize themselves inadvertently. And one of the ones that really stands out to me is when we say, oh, I just want to do this, or I just want to. So wait a minute, why just? We don't need those words. We sometimes, the way we speak can inadvertently let ourselves down too. I once saw a woman do this amazing pitch for in a pitch competition, and when it came to ask for the money, she was asking for $1 million. She asked and I'm raising $1 million, and it was a question rather than a confident statement. And I think there are a lot of things that we do inadvertently in the way we speak. Sometimes talking too fast, or filling conversational gaps, not letting there be silence, or just using too many words, and then nobody hears anything. So there are a series of ways in which we let ourselves down. I remember a long time ago when I was in college, I read a book by Deborah Tannen about this exact topic, like how men and women speak differently, and how women could be heard better. Some of it is just our body language. Some of it is just speaking with a lower tone. Some of it is just like literally not trying to fill those conversational gaps.
Yeah. I had a leader at one point in my career who, when I phoned her, she sounded like she was about 6 years old, and it was really awkward. I had a client a few years ago who didn't have quite such a high pitch, but certainly had a pitch challenge. And we talked about how to come across with a more resonant, deeper tone.
Breathe.
How
Breathe.
and breathe, and how much of a difference.
Just breathe. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it is about the words, sometimes it's about the body language, and certainly those are two areas touched on in the book. What about words that have, sometimes it's one word that has an impact to deflate confidence?
A word that deflates confidence. Honestly, I have never really thought about it this way. And I'm going to ask you, because, I think this is an interesting thing when you ask me these questions, and it makes me think, wow, maybe I'm not conscious enough of this myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never really deconstruct conversations in such a specific way. I do know, however, when someone appears unconfident or when they appear confident, but to actually take it apart and deconstruct, I've never really done that work. But it's interesting now. I think I'm going to go around, and with every conversation I have, I'm going to, what's a confident word? What's an unconfident word? But I don't really think of it in terms of words. I mean, give me an example of a confident word or an unconfident word.
Well, I am going to bear a little bit more of my soul in this segment. One of the words for me, which actually has had a impact in the past, not so much now, is success. Which might sound weird. However, for me, it was a trigger word. And this has come about from a conversation when I was 11, when my dad, I flunked an exam, and it was an important exam by 2 marks. And my dad told me I would never, ever be successful in life. Well, I'm 11. I'm just going into high school. Thanks, Dad. That really, that really hurt.
Why do parents do things like that? I just don't understand it. I can't imagine ever doing anything or saying anything like that to my kids. So
I think that there is a story there, and it's really around him being in World War II and coming back with PTSD after trauma and getting, hit by a bullet in Dunkirk. However, it just came across to me as being just plain mean. So whenever I heard the word success or successful, for years and years after that, what happened is I went into striving mode. I'm darn well going to prove you wrong. Instead of it being an uplifting word, which for many people it is, for me it was a trigger word.
So that's interesting, because I think we all have our associations with those words. So what might be a confident word to one person is not a confident word to another. And when we hear words that trigger us in some way, always a good thing to do is to look at that. What is that saying about me? What's the trigger? What's the thing? What's the experience? Saying, oh, that's interesting. And kind of letting that blocked emotion or memory go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say it's not as impactful now because I've obviously done a lot of personal development work around this.
Right. Exactly. Well, we all do. And that's the right thing to do, because we're all in the same boat. We're all born into this world with all kinds of assumptions and constraints put on us, things people tell us, school teachers, parents, right? Friends, magazines, social media now for a lot of girls coming up, that forces us to be different from who we are and gets us all kind of tangled up in kind of a mess that we then have to unravel, and we spend our lives kind of unraveling that. The great way to do it is be an entrepreneur. Great therapy, right?
Or be a speaker.
Yeah, right. Well, no, it's true, because in any of those things, in any kind of thing where you have to confront fear, you have a choice. You either give into your fears and you give up, or you push through them and you get outside of your comfort zone. And that's where real personal growth happens. So the personal growth happens at the same place that innovation happens.
Yeah. And for me, confidence is about not avoiding adversity. It's about recognizing it, managing, dealing with it, going through it and coming out the other side and looking back and saying, holy smokes, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would be able to get through that, and look at what I did. Mentioned a couple of minutes ago about, I've never really thought about it. If that's all my book does is causes women to think about, more specifically, what words and what language am I using, and how are people responding to me? Am I seeing the responses that I wanted coming out of those conversations, or am I actually being ignored? And I think in one of our previous conversations, we talked about an example where a woman's in a boardroom presenting an idea, and it just gets it doesn't get heard until a man speaks about the same topic and presents the same idea. Do you remember we talked about that?
Yeah, I do. That happens all the time.
And for you, when you're doing a lot of venture capital funding and pitching and things like that, any thoughts or tips on how to avoid that happening from your perspective?
It's interesting because I think sometimes you can do all the right things, and sometimes it still doesn't work. I remember doing a pitch competition. There were 10 of us. We all had 5 minutes to present our companies. It was in the technology world. And there were 3 women and 7 men. And so I did my pitch, and I talked about all the traction we had. I said the whole thing, the addressable market, our go-to-market, what traction we had already in the marketplace. And I talked about specific customers. I said, for this company, we did this, and here was the result, and here was the value we drove. For this company, we did this, and for this company, we did that. And I went through them all, and then I went to the financials, and I went to what we were asking for and the use of capital. So the classic pitch, problem, solution, all of that. But I talked about our customers. And I swear to God, I was the only one in the whole group of 10 to do that. And at the end, all the judges, who were all men, were all asked about their thoughts. And one of them said, I really wish at least one entrepreneur would actually talk about their customers. And I'm like, excuse me, I just did that. And I wondered whether literally all he had heard, because I was wearing a skirt, was la 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 la, right? And I know that my delivery, because I'm a broadcaster, I know my delivery was fine, but I still wonder, like if I had a tape of that and I sent it to you, Yvonne, maybe you'd have some words of things that I would have said or could have said differently. But it was a pitch perfect pitch, and had a man said it, it would have been heard. So sometimes we do play into other people's biases, and just even the question. So when we are going into a VC meeting, they're going to be listening to you a little bit differently than, say, a woman would be. And here's one of the things where it manifests. So women are they tend to be a little bit more conservative about their numbers, say, in a pitch. So they'll be accurate. They'll say, oh, yeah, okay, we can accurately build, we can get to $20 million in 5 years. And they've really looked at every little piece to make sure that they're right. Okay. The guy goes in and he says, we're going to be like $1 billion company in 5 years. And that may be complete, horse manure, but the VC, their pattern is to automatically downgrade whatever you say. Right. And so if the woman goes in accurate, she's going to be downgraded, and then it's not going to be worth investing in.
Yeah. Because
the man, right. And so there's a lot of ways in which we're very different. A guest on my podcast was so funny. She said this, and I have to quote it again. It still makes me laugh. So she said, okay, so a man goes fishing and he catches a minnow. And by the time he gets back to shore, it's Moby Dick. Okay. And then the woman goes out and she catches Moby Dick. By the time she gets back to shore, it's like, no, I don't know. Everybody catches Moby Dick. Oh, wow, it's not that important. I'm not going to tell anyone. So it's not even necessarily the words. It's like we don't even put our hands up. We don't even say. We think it's assumed already. Mm-hmm. So it's so interesting.
So how can we make a fundamental shift in making sure that there are less women doing that in future? What can I include in the book that would have an impact on that topic?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that really spring to mind to begin with. And one of them was just the exchange that you and I had a minute ago with, wow, I haven't really been conscious of that. I've never really picked apart
Right.
speech. There are people who really do that, for a living. And surely all of us women can be helped by that, by having somebody else listen to us and being able to point those things out, because we can't see them in ourselves. We can't see our own shadows, right? It's very difficult to know. So leveraging other women, I think, to help each other. I think also in the meeting, where I've seen meetings really succeed is when women back each other up. So a woman will say something, and then another woman would say, yeah, what Yvonne said, that was really awesome what Yvonne said. And then there's a third woman who says, yes, what Yvonne said. Mm-hmm. And I think when we work together like that, we're heard. But I think when we allow ourselves to be isolated, it doesn't work as well. Now, it may not always be this way, but we are in a moment of change.
Yes.
And different women show up differently. Some, as you were hinting, can be very in their masculine and really kind of pushy and aggressive and all of that, and works to a point. But in the end, it doesn't. Others can be so feminine, so kind of intuitive and in flow that they don't even get seen or heard. So the balance is somewhere. How can we leverage the best of the kind of archetypal masculine trait of being direct, being focused, being clear, right? Being able to just specifically ask for what we want without any weird assumptions or fear, more masculine. And then how can we also really leverage at the same time the intuition, the relationship, the kind of room awareness, that we bring, that allows us to create different sorts of deals, be able to see opportunities sometimes where men can't, and whatnot. But I think where we're really in the zone or combining those two things. I think one other thing that has been really true for me is specifically understanding and trying to understand what my fears are, subconscious ones, and get a muscle memory around specifically doing things that frighten me. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Eleanor Roosevelt. It was someone who said, do one thing that frightens you every day.
I think it was.
So if you pick up the phone and do a cold call, or go on a roller coaster, or just do something like that is outside of your comfort zone. Because where I believe, coming back to the beginning of the conversation, where true confidence comes from is doing something that's hard or doing something you're afraid of and surviving, like you're still alive, like nothing happened, it's okay. And the more that you do that, the more you become comfortable doing that, and you start to get out of your own way. And I think that's very important.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things that you just shared that in particular resonate with me. One is what I guide my clients to do is as long as you show up authentically. So if you are a masculine energy, don't go in trying to be in your feminine energy, because it'll just come out feeling weird, and you'll shake someone's hand and it'll be that horrible vibe and you can't quite figure out what it is, but the energetic resonance is not clear. People don't know how to interpret that, and which is an area that I know about because I worked on this for a number of years. Secondly, I think timing wise, Me Too and all of the new interviews that are coming up, and the sharing of people, both men and women, but particularly women in the entertainment industry, and as a result of not confidently speaking up and saying no, or saying here's another option, or that doesn't work for me, whatever it is, the language, and some of it's in the book, is the language of assertive conversation that could have made a difference. So I'm hoping that this is a very timely book, because it's talking about words, it's talking about confident conversations, how to showcase that inner confidence in a way that gets you heard. Whether we're parents, whether we're in business, as entrepreneurs and founders, if we're showing up in our truth, whatever that looks like, whether it's through operating a social enterprise, whether it's from doing our own self-development work at a deep level, whether it's listening carefully to our clients about what they love about what we're doing, that to me is where we need to put the spotlight.
It's really true.
Yeah. So I know that you're in a hotel lobby and we started a few minutes after the hour. So I want to thank you for sharing some really intriguing insights with me. I know that what you said with regards to women banding together, kind of like a wolf pack, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, Teresa de Grosbois, one of the other authors I interviewed, she has a lovely saying, you know, you can't make yourself famous. And I love that, because when someone else says it, it just has so much more integrity and power to it, much like a testimonial from a client.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone else says, yeah, that was a great idea, Yvonne's idea was a great idea, carries so much more weight.
Well, it's true. I mean, that's what my company does, even on social media. You know, if you're trying to sell a product, in fact, there's a study that shows that we're 12 times more likely to believe a third party than we are to believe the person who's saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. And so it's always better to get other people to say that. I think with women too, I think the way that we can really be heard is to leverage our ability to hear somebody else. And so when someone says something, whether it's music to our ears or whether it triggers us in some sort of negative way, to just stand back and try and disattach from it. It's use it to say, what's this showing me about me?
Right.
But don't get triggered, right? And that's hard. That's hard to do, but to use those experiences to really understand other people. And I think just even in deal making, when we're pushing, when we're in pursuit, when we're pushing, it's harder to get things done in that kind of inherent opposition. Whereas when we are, and you said the word authentic, we actually have an algorithm for that. We call it return on authenticity.
Right.
And when we are being authentic, we're more likely to attract exactly who we want. And when we're being confident and telling the world who we really are, and we're not afraid to be vulnerable, we're brave and just saying who we are, accepting ourselves, the good and the bad, or what we perceive to be the bad, but just like really loving ourselves enough to show up authentically, we attract the people that are the right people for us, and the right deals for us, and the right partners, and the right investors. And we repel people, sure, but we repel the people that we're meant to be repelling, because they're not in alignment with who you are, who your vision is. And so to me, I've come to see confidence in large measure about that, about being confident enough to really accept yourself 100%. Whether it's your body image, whether it's like anything about any kind of quirk, you know, we're all taught that we're not good enough, right? So, but we're like acorns. We have everything we need, right? So we are. And so getting into that practice of real self-acceptance, I think, is the real key. And I think once people do that, they automatically start showing up a lot more confidently.
Yeah. It's an inside job for sure.
Yes.
So before you have to leave, is there anything that you wanted to share in particular with any of the people listening? I know some of my guests have had some sort of a special offer. It's Christmas time. Love to gift something, or if there's something that you have coming up that you wanted to share about, this would be the moment.
Well, okay, so here's what I want people to do. Please subscribe to Wings of Inspired Business. Yes. My mission is to invest in 100 women-founded companies, women-led companies over the next 10 years. And I've started that mission with the podcast because I believe that too many women are suffering and succeeding in silence. And we affirm and acclaim women's stories, but we need to be discovered and discoverable. So the more subscribes we get, the higher up the iTunes rankings we are. So go to iTunes, go to Wings of Inspired Business. Please subscribe. If you like it, review it. Even if you don't like it, review it. I mean, I'm really interested in feedback. That will help us to be discovered. And also, if you do review it, we have a special offer. You can go to wingspodcast.com/win. And if you write a review and you can prove to me that you've written a review, all the instructions are there. You're entered into a draw and you can win a full day, one-on-one, all expense paid mastermind with me in Washington, D.C. And part of that time, I'm going to, just a little hint, I mean, we go through your business like soup to nuts, everything about it. We do mindset, but we also have some spa time. So it's really cool. It's worth like entering to win. So subscribe and review Wings of Inspired Business on iTunes. wingspodcast.com/win.
Thank you for repeating that. What an awesome gift. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm looking forward to it because I find that when I'm helping others, I mean, it's slightly self-interested because I learn too. You know, you learn when you're giving, and I love to be able to give, and it's a wonderful feeling to give, but it's also so, it feels like a gift to me too, because to help somebody else is awesome. So anyway, I'm excited about it.
Well, you should be. It's having listened to a number of the podcasts, there's been some amazing learnings and some super powerful women that you've been interviewing. So thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to sharing this interview as part of the series with the book launch coming up.
Yes. And download Yvonne's episode on Wings, because that's pretty awesome.
I think I can't remember what number I am now, 10 maybe?
I don't remember. You're either like number 16 or 17. It's something like that, or maybe 15. I forget. I think it's 16 actually, from memory. But anyway, I'm now at episode 45. So.
Okay. Well, if you, I'll put the link again when I post this interview. I'll put the link again as well.
Okay. That's wonderful, Yvonne. Thank you so much. We'll have a wonderful Christmas and Happy New Year to you. I look forward to seeing you in the new year. There's so much to talk about and collaborate on and help each other with. So.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Happy holidays.
You too.
Safe travels.
Okay. Bye now. Bye.
Bye.